Hello there. Today I'm going to take a look at the Moondrop Cosmo. I wasn't really going to do a video on this one, but I've been listening to it and I just felt I have to talk about this headphone. So just a cheeky little video here on the Moondrop Cosmo, and I hope you will be able to indulge me on some of my rambling thoughts to do with this headphone. Let's get started. Okay, so I believe this unit came from the headphones.com inventory. I'm not 100% sure about that, but this is the same unit that was reviewed by Listener. So if you're interested in a full deep dive article on this, check out his review there. I will leave that link in the description. And of course, all of this is made possible by headphones.com. And if you want to support what we do here and you find it useful, consider headphones.com for your next audio purchase. And with those disclaimers out of the way, let's get going with the review here. So what's interesting to me with this headphone and its sound quality is that this is an example of a headphone that does tasteful coloration well. So it's a headphone that doesn't really measure straightforwardly great, right? I would say it measures somewhat unconventionally, and you'll see what I mean here in a moment. But it is one that still sounds very, very good. In fact, it sounds good in part because of its colorations. So that's really what I want to get into here. I think a lot of folks think, oh, I'm very measurements focused and we're measurements focused here on the channel, and that, it must match some target, and really that's not what we're all about. And this is a headphone that kind of demonstrates why, at least in my opinion. Just for reference, again, this is a planar magnetic headphone and it comes in at, I believe, $900. So it's in that fairly, high-end price bracket, just shy of $1,000 there. And I think it sounds exceptional. I am kind of blown away by this one, and I want to listen to it all the time. Unfortunately, the ergonomics, it's a bit heavy, right? It's 550 grams, not as heavy as the heaviest Odysseys, but definitely, heavier than what you get with many of the Hi-Fi Man headphones. It's a bit weird. We'll get to that later on. But first, let's just talk about the sound quality here. And subjectively, the Moondrop Cosmo sounds like kind of like a planar version of a Focal sound signature. So if anybody wasn't familiar with the other Moondrop planar magnetic headphones, the over-ears, obviously Moondrop's well known in the IEM space, but for their over-ears, they've gone for a sound signature that's almost a little bit more similar to what you get with the Hi-Fi Man headphones. And this one is not like that. This is a lot more about the mid-range, and it has a forward character to certain areas of the mid-range, and this has the effect of kind of pulling forward or emphasizing certain harmonics for piano tones, and it really creates this extra sense of detail for those instrument tones. For that kind of stuff, this sound signature does exceptionally well. As far as other subjective qualities to do with this headphone, it's overall really, really detailed sounding. And that doesn't come at the cost of timbre. I find this to be also reasonably natural. It's not, sharp and peaky in any area in particular in the treble. In fact, the treble overall is a bit relaxed, and this doesn't seem to impede the detail whatsoever. So, especially because the upper treble comes back a bit. So overall, I think of this as kind of like a smooth yet highly detailed presentation, highly, overall resolving all of those kind of words that you might, associate with a good performing headphone. Its drawback, I feel, is that it doesn't have a bass boost. It's not like it doesn't roll off in the bass. It's just not boosted. And for the way that the overall presentation is here, I think it could use it. So let me just show you guys the measurements here. Let me just pull that up. So this is measured on the B&K 5-2/8. If you're looking for gross data, we have that as well. For the measurements here, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This is, again, a headphone that, looking at the measurements, you wouldn't really necessarily go, yeah, that's going to sound amazing. And it does. The bass, it's well extended, but it does sort of taper off relative to that forward character in the mid-range. And let me just pop over to the raw measurements here. If you look at the raw measurements, you can see that the rise goes all the way up to the ear gain earlier. So for many planar magnetic headphones, or just open back headphones in general, you will see bass extension that kind of starts from 900 hertz and goes all the way down and is flat. And this often creates more of a forward character to that sort of 200, 300 hertz region, because it's just flat all the way across. And with the Moondrop Cosmo, you don't get that. This instead extends fully in the bass, but it kind of extends downward. And ordinarily, headphones that have this kind of tonality, that are a little bit more kind of overall sloped as it goes into the ear gain rather than flat across for the bass extension, they can sound a bit bright. So to balance that, you actually see a more relaxed presentation for the lower treble and the rest of the ear gain on the Cosmo. And that does exceptionally well. Again, this doesn't sound neutral to me. It doesn't sound normal in the sense that you can definitely tell that there's a forward character to that 1 kilohertz range, or 1 to 2 kilohertz range. And you can also hear it a little bit on the relaxed side for the ear gain. But this is the kind of tasteful coloration that I think works extremely well for certain types of recordings. And then again, the rest of the treble, it's just smooth, buttery smooth, no weird harsh peaks or anything like that. And it's well extended, clear, clean, crisp, just phenomenally good for the rest of the treble. So again, this is the kind of sound signature I would not have expected to like, but I absolutely love it. I do EQ it, I add a bass shelf, and I do reduce that 1K by just like a tiny little bit, but I don't think you need to. I think people who are listening to acoustic music, jazz music, classical music, anything with piano tones, vocals also come forward a little bit, which is... It's like an extra sense of detail and texture that gets imparted to vocal tones. That's how I would describe it. Not all vocals, but certain vocals. And the trade-off there is that you lose, again, a little bit of that sort of like thickness and warmth that you might get with a headphone that is a little bit more flat across for the bass extension, rather than this more kind of like sloping downwards presentation from like 500 hertz down to like 20 hertz. So that's the trade-off, but this is one area where like it's the easiest thing in the world to EQ this headphone, and you are far better off getting a headphone like this and EQing the bass than trying to get a headphone that has lots of bass and EQing problems throughout the rest of the, like in the treble, especially above 3 kilohertz, where positional variation, HRTF differences, headphone transfer function variation, all that kind of stuff can lead to, it being way more challenging to EQ. And with this one, like, it's just smooth across the board up there, at least for me, and it measures reasonably smooth up there as well, a bit relaxed, but I think that kind of works given the leaner bass presentation again. So love this sound signature. If anybody has an opportunity to try this headphone, I highly recommend doing that, because this is a sound signature that, again, a bit unconventional, but sounds goddamn fantastic. The other nice thing is that the pads are just removable, right? You can just take the pads off. There's kind of like a magnetic function here where it just sort of magnets into place. We're using magnets as a verb now. If you want a pad swap with this one, it's very easy. You can just take this metal disc out of the pad and find a different pad that fits around the metal disc, and then that'll just magnet into place on the headphone. I love this system. Here you can see the difference that you might be able to get with a pad swap. I've just happened to use some pads that I had lying around. I don't necessarily recommend this one. In fact, I haven't yet found a pad that I like more than the default ones for the sound signature. But if you want to do that, you can, and it's very easy to do. And here you can see the range that you might be able to get just by making a pad swap. So that's the sound quality. This is kind of where the praise stops, because... Actually, the build, I don't mind. I don't have anything against the build quality. This feels like a sturdier thing than what you get with many of the, modern Hi-Fi Man headphones. But the weird thing is, okay, I have a massive head. You guys know this, right? Like, huge, huge dome. You know what they say about people with huge domes? They need ample clicks, right, for the headband. They need lots of clicks. And, okay, I am on the lowest amount of clicks, right? The lowest setting for the strap. The absolute lowest. This does not go any lower. And this is as far as I would go. If I were to increase the clicks to accommodate a larger head, presumably, who has a head that's that large? This is the top of my ear protruding past the cup. I don't understand why this is designed like this. For anybody with a smaller head than mine, this might be a challenge because, again, the lowest clicks fit me perfectly. I mean, maybe Herbert has a big head. Shoutouts to Herbert. But my God, I can't imagine what this would be like for somebody with a small head. Like the cups would be hanging down by their neck. The strap is quite nice, actually. It's wide, and a wide strap is good. The pads are also like of high quality materials, and they're huge, massive opening for the pads, which is a good thing. I do find the pads to be a little bit thin at the front. My ear doesn't touch the inside or anything like that, but this is something where, maybe for somebody it might. And also, the pads don't take up as much of the brunt of the heft of this headphone when you're wearing it, like what you sometimes get with other headphones that are a bit heavier that have really thick compressy pads. To be clear, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I don't think thick compressy pads and designs that use that are necessarily better than these slightly thinner ones. It's all just about trade-offs. And that's just one that I think is worth keeping in mind, because this headphone, again, weighs around 550 grams. And, it actually is reasonably comfortable for me for a couple of hours, but this is not an all day kind of headphone. And so for that reason, the ergonomics, I think is worth calling that out and criticizing. Now, speaking of things that are maybe not so great, the cable here is particularly thick and a bit on the stiff side. It feels of high quality material, or reasonably high quality material. It's this sort of braided style, but I find it keeps its shape a bit. It's a bit on the stiffer side, and it is also quite heavy in comparison to other cables. So I much prefer to use this blue Listen More cable. Shoutouts to Listen More cables, also available on headphones.com. Zing. But I do find that this cable is, it could be better. And aesthetically, this is, it looks a bit like a torture device. I promise you it is more comfortable than it looks, but it is also not amazingly comfortable. Would you want to wear this in a Zoom meeting? Be sitting there, rocking one of these, going I'm just a regular dude listening to my headphones. This is effectively robot wagon wheels. And it looks like that when you wear it, and it's got this weird thing. And even if it's not torturous to wear, it doesn't, the rest of it doesn't match the brilliance of its sound quality, and that is a shame in my opinion. So please, Moondrop, make it slightly more ergonomic and slightly less cursed. Now, for drivability, I'm going to leave the specs up on the screen here. Now, this one does take a bit of power, so I do recommend an amplifier for it. Just keep that in mind. So the pad removal system is great. The sound quality is great. The ergonomics are okay in the category of ultra high-end headphones, because a lot of them are heavy. The aesthetics are... but overall, yeah, this is a headphone that I'm going to recommend, because I love it. I just want to make sure that this headphone doesn't fall under the radar. Make sure that folks are aware of it, because it's good. All right, that's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.